or my opponent gets to automatically pick. So let's say I pick, I want to be pro in this debate. Now my opponent gets to pick if they speak first or second. So even if you lose the coin flip, you still get to pick something. And so because of this, you could have a debate where the con speaks first. I know that might sound a little weird, but the con can speak first. And since they are just affirming or negating the resolution, that's all it is the con just is saying why the resolution is bad first before the pro says why it's good. But be prepared for the con to speak first, the pro can speak first, all those things. And so they'll make that decision. What I would do is just have a coin on you. You don't necessarily have to be the one to flip it. You don't have to be the one that do the pro and the con. You can let them sort that out, and they'll tell you. They'll say the pro is speaking first or the con is speaking first, and you can write it down from there. On the ballot as well, it'll ask you who is pro, who is con. Sometimes it will ask you who spoke first, who spoke second. Most times it does not, because that doesn't really factor into any results in the competition. But sometimes it will ask just for kind of formality reasons. So you can just put who spoke first, who spoke second. So they'll typically tell you as well. If you ever run into a situation where we're at a competition and there are paper ballots, everything's done on paper, not online. This is very rare. This does not happen very often anymore because this is just much faster, especially at larger tournaments. But if it's on paper, what you can do that's really helpful is just hand the ballot to the students and they will fill it out with their names and stuff for you. You don't have to do that yourself because names can be very, very tricky to get correct. And if you get them wrong, that could mess up tab room because we maybe have the wrong kid now. We don't know what kid this is. So just hand them the papers. They typically spell their names right for the most part. So that alleviates that from you. And then you would fill it out the exact same way, just on paper. All right, so I do want to open the floor for any questions really quickly before I start going into the format of that you'll be judging. If there are any questions about anything we talked about prior to that.
So
yes.
Just on that last point, so in the tab room it'll say, okay, here are your 4 kids, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have to indicate which ones are pro and which one's going first?
Yep, so there'll be like a little bubble next to their name on the left side because the right side will have their speaker point bubble. The left side will have the who's pro, who's con. And so you'll just click like the little checkbox that says this team was pro, and the other one will just auto fill in as con.
Okay.
Yep.
And we judge by ourselves, or is there teams of judges?
That's a great question. So in preliminary rounds, you will be judging by yourself. In elimination rounds, typically you're judging with 2 other judges because there's 3 on a panel. And so you'll have 2 other judges judging with you. You do not confer with one another. So you do not talk about who you think won or lost. You just put your own thoughts down on the ballot. You submit it. The computer will then tell you who won, who lost. It'll say there was a 2-1 for the pro, a 3-0 for the con, whatever the case may be, but you don't talk and come to a unanimous decision because we want you to make your own decision, and then whoever wins after 3 judges have made their own decisions, that's what we move forward with. All right, so I will get into the format that you will be judging. And again, most of this is just to make sure you're able to keep time as well with the students. So after I write it, if you would like, I'm going to switch marker colors, but after I write it, if you would like to take a picture of it with your phone, that's really helpful. If you like to quiz your students on it at home, that's also really fun because they should know it by heart. So the first speech, and again, this is tricky because in this debate, con can speak first, but I will just go with the model where the pro speaks first. So starting with the pro constructive, that speech is 4 minutes. And this is just the pro's opening speech where they're just talking about why you should agree that the resolution is a good idea. That's all they're doing here. Right after this speech, you have the con constructive, which again is also 4 minutes. And then, after this kind of block of speeches, and you'll notice this is kind of how public forum works, you'll have 2 speeches as a block, and then you'll have what we call crossfire, which is just a questioning period. And this can be 2 to 3 minutes, depending on the competition. Again, that will be listed out to you in the email, or the tournament director will send you a text letting you know this is the format that we will be following. And so crossfires 2 to 3 minutes. The crossfires are always between, at least for this first portion, the two previous speakers. And so they'll stand back up and they'll question each other. And the way these crossfires work is they are back and forth. They're not one-sided to where one person is asking questions of the other. They should go back and forth. Now sometimes debaters don't ask questions, and so they just get questioned for 2 to 3 minutes. That's on them. I would typically take speaker points away for that because you're supposed to ask questions. You're supposed to, if your opponent is being aggressive and asking repeated questions, we teach you to stop them and say, it's my question now, and then ask your question. And so if you find that a student is not asking questions or not asking good questions, this is something that would typically go in the speaker point area as well and start lowering their speaker points, do those. If they ask very good questions and they're the right amount of assertive, then you would give them higher speaker points because this starts affecting that as well. After this, you have your pro rebuttal, which is, it's 4 minutes. You also have a con, same thing, 4 minutes. So they kind of do this together. And again, 4 minutes, right after that, another crossfire, same amount of time. After the rebuttals are done, again, questioning. These two individuals are the only ones questioning. These two should not be participating in this question period at all. They should be sitting and preparing, or they can watch if they want, but they should be preparing for their speeches. After this crossfire, you have the summary speeches. Which you now jump down to 2 minutes. So if you recall when I spoke about debaters starting to talk very quickly, this is where and why that happens, because there's a steep drop-off from 4 minutes of argumentation to 2 minutes to respond to that argumentation. And so that makes debaters start talking a little bit faster to try to keep up with the number of arguments that are happening here. Due to that, these debaters started talking faster, which then only made these debaters start talking faster. You can see how now everyone talks very fast. So that's why it might be a good idea, especially if you know that you don't particularly like fast talkers or you don't understand fast talkers, just let them know, don't talk fast. Just please don't do that. I tell them not to do that. I can understand it. I just don't think it's a good practice for students to get into, so I still tell them not.